Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Horsemanship Journey podcast. My name's Shane Jacob, your host, and I appreciate you taking your time to be here with me today. Today we got a good subject, one that's really interesting to think about and to observe. You know, because the thing of it is being the parent of a teen or being the parent of being a parent, period, sometimes it's an emotional roller coaster. And especially as teens, as our kids start to grow up and they start to detach and separate from us, they start to form their own identities. That can be very challenging. It can be part of the, it's part of the emotional roller coaster. So it's kind of interesting to observe. I have a parallel today. If you look at young foals and mares in the future and how that goes, I have closely, I had a stud horse for quite a while. And so I had a chance to observe domestic mares and foals up close and then go through the weaning process, which is, of course, separating them to where they become their own individual horses. They're no longer, together, to go through that process. And eventually full grown and mature and all that. There's a couple lessons I think that are valuable that we can look at with horses that we can relate to. So if you look at horses in the wild, with a newborn, it's just like pretty much any animal that I've seen with a newborn. Those mares are fiercely protective. You know what I'm saying? So we have a mare, or the mother, who is just so attentive to every movement and every breath of that newborn foal. She's constantly on alert. Nobody's coming near. Okay. A lot of times in a domestic, with a domestic horse, you need to use caution if you're going to enter, a small area, stall or a corral with a newborn foal, because that mare is so protective, right? She'll hurt you a lot of times if you go near a newborn. And so, also on the other side of it, now the newborn instinctively knows that this foal knows that he's supposed to stay to mom. I don't know how they know. They know how to stand up immediately and nurse within an hour. And then they also know they need to stay close, and they do for quite a while, really for, a month or plus. That mare is staying right with him and for her, and the foal is staying close to the mother. It doesn't venture out very much. Of course, as they age, the foal starts to leave and go further and further out by himself. The mare starts to allow and doesn't, go with him, and starts to allow him to venture out more and more. And so gradually her protective instinct goes down, and he ventures out further and further. By the time the horse in the wild, by the time the foal's 9 months old, she doesn't allow him to nurse anymore, even when he does come around. And eventually they maintain a bond for up to 2 or 3 years. And even if they're separated, it's interesting to note that research has proven that when they bring them back together, that they still recognize each other. So so this whole natural process, it's kind of interesting to observe, but it's not a perfect necessarily process either. Mares become so aggressive in protecting that's, they can injure other horses or people or whoever's in the case of a domestic mare. They can, like I said, injure people. Sometimes they can inadvertently hurt their own foal just in an act of aggression to protect him. Can be hard on other horses or other foals that are coming by in a pasture or something like that. The thing of it is as parents, this process of separation and detachment as our kids mature, it's not a perfect process either. As parents, if we're not careful, we just we react to ways that can actually be harmful for our kids. So it's natural, of course, for teenagers and kids to eventually seek independence as they get older and older. They separate, they pull away, they start to form their own identities, and they gravitate towards their peers. But see, here's the thing that a lot of times we forget as parents is they have to detach from us. I mean, a lot of times we don't really think that through. At least I know I didn't, right? I didn't really realize that this once, clingy child that, I took care of and fully depended on me is going to turn a corner and not so much need me anymore for certain things and eventually just be completely independent by themselves. And so that process, if we're not aware of it, we can do things that are just not helpful, and a matter of fact, that are harmful for our kids. So, um, so what I'm talking about is what happens when they begin that if we're not prepared for it, right? So it's easy to think thoughts like, um, well, why don't they want to be with me? They don't even appreciate me anymore, and they're spoiled, and I've just spoiled them, and I don't know what I've done, or and then we start to think about ourselves, right? Because we kind of get our feelings hurt, we can take it personal, and we start to have all these thoughts because our kids don't want to start to have less and less to do with us. They start, walking 10 feet behind you and wanting off 2 blocks before you get to school. And I remember when I was a young man, I have 7 siblings, so my mom has 8 children in total with me. And at one point, we had these. She got us these. I can't remember. She used to make a lot of shirts for us, but we all had matching shirts, so we had to get this picture. And for whatever reason, she thought we needed to go to the mall to get the picture. I don't know. It's what we did back then, I guess. That's what we did. So anyway, we've all got to go to the mall. 8 kids, or how many? There might have only been 6 or 7 at this time that were born by then. But so my mom and dad and all of us kids, however many there were going to the mall to this little studio to get a picture taken in our matching Western shirts. All right. So by this time, I don't know, in my late teens, or I couldn't even been 20-ish. I don't know. We get to the mall, okay, and all of us kids, down to however old they were, the older kids that were in high school and junior high, and me, we all like separated and went to all in different doors around this ginormous building, because we didn't like want to be seen all going together. Okay, so it's just an example. I don't know how. I don't remember my mom and dad being particularly thrilled about how we handled that, but we all met up in this studio and then we separated again and met back up at the car. So, like I was saying, the question is when this happens, are you prepared? And if not, because what can happen is we just default to things like they don't care about me anymore. They don't even appreciate what I've done. They don't care about me, or I failed as a parent because I'm losing the relationship, or, why am I feeling like this loss of connection that I once had? And so what happens a lot is we react. We try to force things that we probably shouldn't, and we react with anger. We're not coming out as good as we can, and it ends up having a negative impact. Okay, there's so many things that we can think if we default, if we're not prepared for it. It results in increasing conflict, which results in, by the way, further and further distancing and separation and less connection, which is what we're so upset with sometimes to start with. So it's important to remember that this is a phase of separation, and it's normal. Okay, it's not just normal; it's a necessary part of evolution and of growing up. Um, the Sometimes kids even lash out, like "leave me alone," or "I want to be alone," or "can't you just leave me alone?" And it's hard to handle that. I'm not saying that it's easy, when we start having this behavior, because it's a big switch for us parents too, right? Because like I said, we're used to them really needing us, and when we can fulfill that need, it makes us feel good. Then all of a sudden, they need us less and less, and we're going, uh, it kind of hurts, and then we're looking to them to help solve our emotional problem, and then we act out in ways that does not help. Okay, it's harmful. So um, they're hard to it's hard to handle, but it's part of the deal, right? Because they must separate themselves. The baby birds are going to have to, stand up, and they're going to have to get part of their identity is to become more associated with their peers, people their own age, right? They need, as they start to answer questions of themselves, like, who am I? establish their own identity, establish their own sense of self, right? Like, what is my self-image? They're starting to establish their beliefs about themselves. And so since you're not their same age or your same size, they're going to people of the same age and same size, and you know, they're communicating with them more than a lot of times they're communicating with their parents about who they're going to become. But establishing those relationships with people with their peers is also it's an important part of the deal. So as parents, as we look at this, one of the big keys is determining a difference, okay, between healthy separation, okay, and detachment from unhealthy isolation, which we talked about before, right? Because isolation is nothing to mess around with. It is serious business. Um, the so um, so let's just talk about that. How do we distinguish the difference? How do we because the balance, sometimes it can feel like, well, how am I supposed to know? I don't know the difference. It's so hard. It's so much pressure between too much and not enough. So there's 4 questions that you can ask yourself that helps to determine where you're at with this detachment. Number one is the behavior that they're doing healthy? Now, this is a subjective answer. I realize that, but here's the deal. As a parent, we usually have a sense of what is good for our kids or not, okay? Most of the time. If we can't clearly answer it, we're truly confused, we don't know, I recommend just check with the medical professional, okay? And see if this amount of separation is what would be considered to be unhealthy or not. I think most of the time we know. Number 2 is are they respecting our boundaries and our agreements? In other words, if we have agreements set in place, are they keeping the family agreements? Are they keeping the family rules as they distance themselves? Okay, if they're not, it's not an excuse to not keep the family rules. That's a whole separate thing. But if they're detaching and separating inside of our established agreements and boundaries, that's number 2 to the second question. The third question is for us right now, as soon as we've established this is healthy and they're not breaking the rules, is to look right here, right? Which is what we always do, and say, hey, what's going on with me? What am I feeling in this? And just have some awareness around, take take some moments to identify and to understand what is going on, what our emotions are, right? What we're feeling. Are we having emotions? Are we feeling fearful? Are we feeling insecurity, unmet expectations? What's stirring around ourselves that we can resolve and take care of here before it has a negative repercussion out there? Okay, that's number 3. What am I feeling? That's the third question. And the fourth question is, how can I support this healthy detachment? Okay, that's the next question. What steps can you take to encourage independence? Because while at the same time just maintaining your presence as a loving, confident leader. And so, as hard as it is to let go and to go through this transition as a parent, it's extremely important to remember that the goal is to raise a respectful, independent, capable adult, right? So, or to help them develop into that. So when you're prepared mentally, okay, for the transition, it's just so much easier to approach it with unconditional love and understanding instead of resistance. And so that's the big keys right here. Just like foals, they need a lot of time to become self-sufficient horses. Teens need time and space to become their own people. And when we regulate our own emotions and we respond with intention, thoughtfully, we demonstrate to our children that, how we handle, challenges with respect and confidence. And when we show up with respect and confidence, then, we're showing them, it teaches them, we're leading by example. Um, you know, Parenting's never perfect. It's not going to be that way. It's not going to be that way today, and it's not going to be that way tomorrow. But what really matters most is that we just are showing up with intention, right? And even when things feel chaotic, that we're taking time to look at ourselves and get ourselves where we want to be so that we can show up like the kind of leader that we want to be. Um, Stable living coaching, that's what we do. We offer strategies and tools to help parents and teens to go through these tricky years and all the things that go along with it, so that they show up with more confidence and have more connection. Um, you can always find out more about stable living coaching at thehorsemanshipjourney.com. Thank you for being with me today. Remember, you cannot fail as long as you don't ever stop chasing it.